All right, to section 11, objective 2, we're talking wrist and hand. So let's start with our radial styloid process and our ulnar styloid process. So our radial is just this point here off of our radius, radial styloid process, and then this point off of our ulnar is our ulnar styloid process. Moving distal to these bones are a small collection called our carpal bones. All right, so that first row is going to start off with the scaphoid bone, which is what we palpate in our anatomical snuff box. From our scaphoid, we've got our lunate, and from the lunate, we'll go to our triquetral with this small bone sitting on top of triquetral, and that's called our pisiform. So the second layer, the most distal layer of carpal bones, starts with our trapezium, moving to our trapezoid. Right here in the middle, under the third, is our capitate, and then our hamate. All right, so distal to our carpal bones will be our metacarpal bones, and these all have three parts. So there will be a head, a shaft, and a base to all of our metacarpal bones, and distal to those will be our phalanges, so our fingers. And all of our phalanges except for one will have three parts. They'll each have a distal end, a middle portion, and a proximal portion, except for our thumb, which just has a distal and a proximal portion. Okay, so let's talk about joints. So there's joint space between our carpals and our metacarpals called our carpal metacarpal joints, and then between our metacarpals and our phalanges, and that would be MCP, metacarpal phalangeal joints. And then in between our phalanges and our fingers, these joint spaces would just be IP, interphalangeal joints. So we also have some motion that happens in our wrist. So let's talk a little bit about our radiocarpal joint. So our wrist joint, this area here. So the motion that takes place there is going to be flexion and extension, abduction, adduction, and then circumduction. And then we know that flexion and abduction happens at the midcarpal joint of our hand. All right, so moving on to our carpal metacarpal joints. So our carpals and our metacarpals. This has varying levels of motion. So from our first digit, the CMC would be flexion and extension, abduction, adduction. There's virtually no movement between the second and third CMCs, and then there's some at the fourth, but the fifth is actually highly mobile. Thank you.